Chapter 1. The Birth of Crius, the silent flame beneath the stars. Before Olympus crowned its rulers, and before mortals carved temples into marble, the cosmos was a vast and endless expanse where chaos reigned. From chaos came Gaia, the earth, firm and fertile, and Uranus, the sky, infinite and glittering with newborn starlight. Together, they birthed the primordial line of Titans, beings of unimaginable size and elemental power forces of creation given form. Among these firstborn stood Crius, a Titan often veiled in silence, yet wrapped in the majesty of the heavens themselves, where his brother Hyperion radiated the blazing brilliance of the sun, and Crius embodied the sharpness of intellect. Crius carried within him the mystery of the constellations, the eternal patterns that stitched night and time into meaning. Crius was not like the others who clamored for dominion. He was contemplative, a watcher, a figure who leaned into the southern skies, where he first felt the pull of the stars. Born of Uranus' boundless dome and Gaia's nurturing soil, Crius carried both stability and infinity within him. From his gaze, sparks of light scattered into the void, forming the first hints of constellations' silent guides for all who would one day walk the earth. The weight of the four corners, the cosmos, was balanced on four cardinal points, each Titan guarding one pillar of creation. Hyperion took the east, calling forth the dawn. Iapetus claimed the west, where shadows fell into twilight. Crius stood in the north, embodying the cold intellect of the heavens. And Crius was entrusted with the south, where warmth, stars, and cycles of time would weave together. In this station, Crius was less a warrior and more a sentinel of cosmic order. He turned his gaze to the heavens, watching as the stars blossomed like seeds in the darkness. The constellations moved with his breath, tracing stories across the night sky. Each pattern he formed became a prophecy, a secret only the wise could read. Though he spoke little, Crius was known among the Titans as a figure of patience and hidden strength. He was not quick to anger, nor reckless with ambition. Instead, his mind was anchored in the eternal Titan who saw beyond the surface of the world into the fabric of time itself. The children of Uranus and Gaia, yet peace was never eternal in the age of the Titans. Uranus, though vast and mighty, grew cruel, fearing the power of his own children. He pressed them deep into Gaia's womb, burying them beneath mountains and forcing his offspring to live in darkness. Crius felt the weight of his father's tyranny, not only in the earth around him, but in the silence of the stars, which dimmed beneath Uranus' oppressive will. Gaia, grieving and enraged, called upon her children to rise. Among them, Crius stood quietly, not the loudest voice of rebellion, but one of its steadiest pillars. It was his brother Cronus who finally lifted the sickle forged by Gaia and struck against Uranus, cleaving heaven from earth. Blood spilled into the sea, birthing monsters and furies, but also setting the Titans free. Crius watched as the constellations above trembled with change. The heavens had been wounded, yet in the wound, new patterns emerged. He knew then that nothing in the cosmos was eternal save for change itself, and that even the Titan's age would not last forever. The silent Titan's place, when Cronus seized power and declared himself king, Crius accepted his role without question. He was not a schemer, nor did he hunger for thrones. Instead, he turned once again to the skies, where others vied for rule over earth, ocean, and storm. Crius whispered to the stars, shaping them into signs constellations that would one day guide sailors across treacherous seas, farmers through the cycles of planting, and priests in their search for omens. He became known as the Titan of Constellations, the hidden order in the chaos of the heavens. His silence made him mysterious, but his wisdom made him eternal. Thus began the story of Crius, not the loud conqueror, not the wrathful destroyer, but the watcher of stars, the shaper of patterns, the Titan whose legacy would remain above all mortal eyes, every night for all time. Chapter 2: The Silent Watcher of the Stars, the Titan who listened to the heavens when the age of Titans had just begun. Their voices thundered across mountains, seas, and skies. Hyperion's laughter was like a rising dawn. Iapetus's rage was as heavy as the crashing west, and Crius's sharp words cut like cold winds of the north. But amidst this symphony of elemental power, one voice was missing. Crius rarely spoke, he watched. For Crius, silence was not weakness, it was presence, a stillness in which the stars themselves could whisper. Where his brothers sought to shape the world with strength or cunning, Crius stood at the edge of the heavens, gazing toward the southern skies. And in the vast tapestry above him, he saw not chaos, but patterns, threads of light-weaving stories, secrets, and signs. The night's patient guardian Crius was not a Titan of fire or storm. He bore no blazing crown like Hyperion, nor did he wield a mighty blade like Iapetus. His strength lay in his constancy. When the sun set and darkness swept across the world, mortals trembled at the unknown. But Crius ensured that above the darkness, the stars remained. He moved them gently, silently, like a shepherd guiding his flock. To him, each star was more than a spark, it was a seed of meaning, a divine rune, a reminder that even the blackest void was written with order. The other Titans called him the Silent Watcher, for he lingered often in solitude, his gaze fixed on the skies long after the others turned away. But to Crius, it was not solitude, it was communion. He was listening, and the stars were speaking. The southern pillar, the cosmos, rested on 4 corners, each ruled by a Titan brother. Crius, guardian of the south, carried not only direction, but destiny. The south was the land of warmth, mystery, and the unknown horizon. It was also the seat of constellations' patterns, born in the southern skies, that would never fade, even when gods rose and fell. From his vantage, Crius shaped the heavens into maps. Hunters, lions, ships, and serpents blazed above, each constellation carrying both beauty and prophecy. They were not random, but placed with purpose, guiding both Titan and mortal alike. To stand as the southern pillar meant stability in movementa paradox only Crius could embody. The stars shifted, seasons turned, yet Crius remained steady, ensuring the cycles endured. The silence that spoke, though Crius did not engage often in Titan councils. When he spoke, the others listened. His words were like the constellations he crafted, few but shining with meaning. When Hyperion sought to chase the sun across the sky endlessly, it was Crius who whispered, "Even the brightest flame must set, for only in darkness can the stars be seen." When Iapetus raged that war was the only measure of strength, Crius replied, "Look to the heavens, even the fiercest storms pass, but the constellations remain. True power is not destruction, but endurance." These words, quiet yet immovable, carried the weight of the heavens themselves. The mortals guiding lights, though humanity was still young, Crius foresaw their need for guidance. He wove constellations, not only for beauty, but as a map of survival. When sailors crossed dark oceans, stars would point them home. When farmers looked upward, constellations told them when to plant and when to reap. When priests and prophets sought meaning, they traced the stars back to Crius's silent hand. He never demanded worship. He did not thunder for temples or blood. His legacy was subtler, hidden in plain sight. Every gaze toward the night sky was an act of reverence, whether mortals realized it or not. The stillness before the storm. Yet, even as Crius wove his silent constellations, a shadow stirred on the horizon. Cronus, who now ruled after striking down Uranus, grew paranoid. He feared his children, as Uranus had once feared him. Whispers of prophecies Crius could see written in the stars spoke of a new generation that would rise against the Titans. Crius remained silent, watching. He did not betray Cronus, nor did he offer counsel to Zeus, the child hidden away. But the stars told him a truth he could not deny. Change was coming. The constellations shifted with uneasy light, as though preparing for a great upheaval. And so Crius stood, the silent watcher of the stars, knowing that soon his constellations would guide not just mortals, but gods in their war for the cosmos. Chapter 3. The Cosmic Balance. The four pillars of the world. The cosmos, though vast and endless, was not chaos alone. It held within it a delicate balance, woven by titans who embodied not just strength, but the very foundations of existence. Among them, 4 brothers stood as guardians of the world's eternal order. Hyperion, the east flame of dawn. Iapetus, the west shadow of twilight. Crius, the north intellect of the heavens. And Crius, the south sentinel of constellations. Together, they were not merely titans. They were the cardinal pillars upon which the cosmos rested. Without them, the sky would crumble, seasons would falter, and the rhythm of life would collapse into chaos. The eastern flame, Hyperion. From the east, Hyperion rose daily with the fire of the sun. His presence ignited morning, birthing light after night's long shadow. His laughter was thunderous, his stride blinding, and every dawn was a renewal of his might. To mortals, Hyperion was both blessing and trial. His warmth gave crops life, yet his blazing temper scorched fields when untempered. But to the Titans, he was the eternal flame, the certainty that light would always return. The western shadow, Iapetus, where Hyperion brought beginnings, Iapetus carried endings. The west was his dominion, the place where the sun fell and shadows stretched long across the earth. He was fierce and unyielding, a titan of mortality, struggle, and the reminder that all things must fade. It was Iapetus who sharpened the edge of destiny, ensuring that strength meant survival and weakness led to ruin. Mortals would later inherit this truth, for it was from Iapetus's line that mankind itself would descend. The northern mind, Crius, cold and sharp as the northern winds, Crius was the titan of intellect. He read the heavens as one might read a scroll, each star a rune, each constellation a phrase in the language of the cosmos. From his station, Crius was the anchor of thought and prophecy. Priests and seers would later trace their wisdom back to him, for he carried foresight and the hunger for divine truth. His realm was not fire or shadow, but knowledge, the silent force that shaped gods and mortals alike. The southern sentinel, Crius. And then came Crius, the titan of the south, where his brothers burned, cut, and commanded. Crius endured. His realm was the night sky itself, stitched with constellations that stretched endlessly across the heavens. He was the quiet axis, the hidden balance between all things. His stars guided the farmer and the sailor, but they also guided time itself, marking seasons, years, and cycles of destiny. Crius was less a flame, less a shadow, less a voice of prophecy, and more a mapmaker of eternity. Where his brothers embodied power, Crius embodied pattern. Without him, the cosmos would have no measure, no rhythm, only chaos. The harmony of the four corners together, the four created a harmony that even Cronus, king of the Titans, could not break. Hyperion's dawn rose as Crius's constellations faded. Iapetus's twilight descended as Cus's wisdom unveiled the hidden truths of night. The world breathed in this eternal balance, day folding into night, light meeting shadow, mind guided by stars. Mortals who gazed upward saw not for Titans, but the order of creation itself. They did not know the names, but they lived by their cycles, sowing, harvesting, sailing, resting, all tied to the pillars the brothers sustained. The loom of time Crius, as the southern sentinel, often imagined himself as a weaver. His constellations were threads, stretching across a vast, cosmic loom. Each shift of the stars marked the turn of time, binding Hyperion's fire, Iapetus's shadow, and Cus's intellect into a single story. And yet, even as he wove, Crius felt tension building in the loom. Threads quivered with unease, constellations shifting with unrest. The balance, once eternal, now trembled. For in the silence of night, Crius saw what others did not. A storm approaching, a war not of mortals, but of gods. The Titanomachy had not yet begun, but its seeds were already sown in the constellations above. Chapter 4. Union with Eurybia, the marriage of stars and sea as the constellations turned above and the tides rolled below. The cosmos bore witness to a union that would ripple through both sea and sky. Crius, the silent watcher of stars, whose constellations gave order to the heavens, found his counterpart not among the fiery or thunderous Titans, but in the deep, churning power of the ocean. Her name was Eurybia, daughter of the sea deities, Pontus and Gaia. She was not like the tranquil Nereids who danced upon the waves, nor the storm-born monsters who raged against sailors. Eurybia embodied mastery of the sea itself, goddess of strength, command, and dominion over the forces that lay hidden beneath the surface. The meeting of sky and sea, Crius and Eurybius, paths crossed not in battle, but in stillness. Crius stood at the southern horizon, his gaze lifted to the stars, when Eurybia emerged from the rolling waters, crowned with foam and pearls. Where Crius was silence, she was voice. Where he was stars, she was tide. She looked upon him and spoke, "Silent Titan, why do you watch but never act?" And Crius replied, with calm, "I act through patterns. The stars do not roar, but they guide. The sea moves, yet it does not wander. You and I are bound by the same order." It was in that moment that they recognized one another not as opposites, but as complements. The stars marked the skies, and the waves answered upon the shores. One eternal, one ever-changing, yet together forming the rhythm of the cosmos, the sacred union. Their marriage was celebrated, not with feasts of fire or thrones of gold, but beneath the vast sky, where constellations shone upon the ocean's surface. The stars reflected in the waves, and the sea answered with glittering light, as if blessing their bond. The other Titans looked upon this union with curiosity. Hyperion marveled that Crius, so silent, had chosen a consort so commanding. Iapetus questioned whether the sea could ever be bound to the order of the stars. But Cus, with his intellect, saw the truth. In Crius and Eurybia, sky and sea were woven together. The children of Crius and Eurybia, from their union, came children whose power carried both starlight and seawater, destiny and destruction. Astraeus, god of dusk and stars, who inherited his father's constellations, but tied them to the evening's twilight glow. Pallas, Titan of warcraft and battle, whose strength came from his mother's command of force and discipline. Perses, Titan of destruction, a being of raw, uncontrollable might, embodying the sea's fury and the stars' inevitability. Each child carried a fragment of their parents, and together they would shape the myths of gods and mortals alike. Harmony and foreshadowing for a time, Crius and Eurybius' union was one of harmony. The stars above mirrored the waves below, and mortals saw in the night sky a reflection of the sea's vastness. Farmers looked to Astraeus' stars for signs of seasons, warriors invoked Pallas for strength, and kings feared Perses, for his name was a warning of destruction. Yet Crius, ever silent, saw further. In the constellations, he glimpsed shadows of war prophecies, where his children would not remain untouched by fate. For just as the sea could not remain still, so too could the stars not remain unchallenged. The Titanomachy was approaching, and Crius knew the bond between stars and sea would soon be tested by fire, storm, and the wrath of a younger generation. Thus ended the stillness of his watch. With Eurybia at his side, and his children rising with power, Crius's legacy expanded beyond the constellations. He was no longer just the silent watcher. He was the father of a new lineage whose fate would burn across both heavens and earth. Chapter 5. The Birth of the Star Children, the Legacy of Crius and Eurybia. When Crius, Titan of Constellations, and Eurybia, mistress of the sea's hidden power, joined in sacred union, the cosmos shifted. For from their bond came not just children, but forces that would ripple through both the heavens and the earth. The birth of their offspring was marked by omens, written in the stars, and whispered in the waves' prophecies of greatness, conflict, and destiny. The coming of Astraeus, Lord of Dusk and Stars, the first child born of Crius and Eurybia, was Astraeus, whose very name meant of the stars. His birth was heralded by the fading of the sun into twilight, as the evening sky lit with countless constellations. From his father, Astraeus inherited the silent wisdom of the heavens, the patterns that shaped seasons, guided travelers, and foretold the future. But Astraeus was not only a keeper of stars. He ruled over the dusk, that liminal moment between day and night, light and shadow. At his rising, the winds stirred, and the first breezes of evening swept across the lands. To mortals, Astraeus became the herald of the night, the one who painted the skies with silver dust. In ages to come, he would be known as the father of the Animoi, the wind gods, and the Astra Planeta, the wandering stars planets that roamed the heavens. The birth of Pallas, the Titan of warfare, the second child, was Pallas, born beneath a storm-tossed night. Lightning flashed across the constellations, and the sea raged with fury as Eurybia labored. Pallas emerged strong and unyielding, his cry like the clash of weapons upon bronze. From his mother, he inherited the mastery of force and discipline. From his father, he inherited the cold calculation of the stars. Pallas was not a god of chaos, but of order in battle. a warlord who would shape warriors with strategy as sharp as his strength. To the mortals who prayed to him, Pallas embodied the iron law of war. That victory was not given to the reckless, but to those who fought with precision, discipline, and courage. He was the Titan of warcraft, and his name would inspire fear upon the battlefield. The rise of Perses, the Titan of destruction. But it was their third child, Perses, who shook even the hearts of the Titans. Unlike Astraeus, who brought twilight, or Pallas, who embodied controlled warfare, Perses was raw force incarnate. Born beneath a blood-red moon, Perses entered the world with hands that crackled like breaking stone. His cry was not a sound, but a shattering, as if mountains themselves had grown. From the beginning, he embodied catastrophe destruction. Perses was not cruel by nature, but his very essence was ruin. Where he walked, things broke. Where he struck, walls fell. Even the constellations seemed to dim when his power surged. To mortals, he became the omen of disaster, invoked when cities burned, when empires fell, and when the sea swallowed ships whole. The legacy of the star children together, Astraeus, Pallas, and Perses, represented three forces that ruled both gods and men. Astraeus, the stars and the winds, the flow of time and destiny. Pallas, the art of battle, the discipline of warriors, and the rule of force. Perses, the ruin that comes when all else fails, destruction as an inevitable truth. Crius looked upon his children with pride, though he spoke little. Eurybia, fierce and commanding, raised them with the strength of the sea. But both parents knew these children were not simply titans, they were portents of what was to come, the shadow of prophecy. For as Astraeus watched the stars, he read omens of war. As Pallas trained in the ways of battle, he prepared for conflicts yet unnamed. And Perses, restless and fierce, grew hungry for a purpose that even his parents could not contain. The Titanomachy had not yet begun, but already the seeds were sown. The children of Crius and Eurybia would not escape the storm. In the constellations above and the crashing waves below, the signs were clear. Their legacy would shape the fate of Olympus itself. Chapter 6. Astraeus and the Winds of Destiny, the Lord of Twilight and the Keeper of the Stars. When twilight descended upon the earth, a quiet hush would fall across the world. The sun retreated into the underworld, and the silver shimmer of night began its reign. This sacred transition belonged to Astraeus, firstborn son of Crius and Eurybia. Neither day nor night was wholly his. Instead, he ruled the delicate boundary between them, the moment of balance where shadow and light embraced. The Twilight Lord from the beginning, Astraeus, was unlike his brothers, where Pallas raged like the clash of bronze, and Perses thundered with destruction. Astraeus moved with calm precision. His eyes reflected the constellations of his father, and his breath carried the stillness of his mother's seas. Mortals would later say that Astraeus painted the twilight skies with his hands, brushing deep purples, fiery reds, and shimmering golds across the heavens. Each dusk was his masterpiece, and each dawn his farewell. But Astraeus was not only the artist of the skies, he was also the reader of omens, for in the slow dimming of light, the first stars appeared, whispering secrets of destiny. Kings, warriors, and sailors alike would look to the stars for guidance, and through them Astraeus spoke. The father of the Anemoi, the winds in his union with Eos, the radiant goddess of dawn. Astraeus gave birth to the Anemoi, the four winds that ruled the earth's breath. Boreas, the harsh north wind, cold and unyielding, bringing winter's spite. Notice the humid south wind, heavy with storms and summer heat. Eurus, the unpredictable east wind, bringer of sudden change and misfortune. Zephyrus, the gentle west wind, soft and nurturing, herald of spring. Each wind carried a piece of Astraeus's twilight power. They were not only children, but extensions of his cosmic will, weaving weather, fate, and the breath of the world. Mortals feared and worshipped them, for the winds could bring prosperity with rains or ruin with tempests. The wandering stars, Astra Planetae, from his bond with Eos, also came, the Astra Planetae, the wandering stars, which mortals later knew as the planets. To the ancient Greeks, these were not lifeless celestial bodies, but living deities, radiant children of Astraeus, Fane and Saturn, slow, distant, a keeper of discipline and time. Phaethon, Jupiter, radiant with authority, ruler among the planets. Pyrrho, Aes, Mars, blazing red, patron of war and blood. Eosphoros, Hesperos, Venus, the morning and evening star, embodiment of love and beauty. Stilben, Mercury, swift-footed, messenger of the skies. Thus, Astraeus became not just the Lord of Dusk, but also the father of the cosmic order of the heavens. Every wandering star, every gust of wind, was a reminder of his dominion, the gift and the burden of prophecy. As the stars rose each night, Astraeus gazed upon them, reading destinies woven by the fates. He foresaw the rise of the Olympians, the great war of gods, and the downfall of his kin. He spoke little of what he saw, for prophecy was both a gift and a curse. To mortals, he granted glimpses of the future through the alignment of stars. Priests and oracles sought him in dreams, and sailors prayed to him before voyages. But to his fellow Titans, Astraeus remained silent, burdened by truths they were not ready to hear. The calm before the storm, though, Astraeus was a bringer of peace. His destiny was entangled with war. The Titanomachy was yet to come, but already the winds he fathered stirred restlessly. Boreas whispered of winter's cruelty, Notus roared with storms, Eurus shifted with unease, and Zephyrus sighed with sorrow. The Twilight Lord knew his children would one day decide the fates of both gods and men. And so, each evening, Astraeus painted the skies in silence, knowing that the beauty of dusk was but a fragile veil before the storm. Chapter 7. Pallas the warrior Titan, the strategist of the Titans in the halls of the Titans, where gods of immense strength and power gathered. There was one who embodied the art of battle itself, Pallas, second son of Crius and Eurybia. Unlike his brothers Astraeus and Perses, Pallas was neither dreamer of stars nor destroyer of worlds. Instead, he was the master of discipline, precision, and strategy, the mind and muscle behind the chaos of war. The birth of a warrior from the moment of his birth. Omens of conflict surrounded Pallas. The storms that raged the night he entered the world seemed less like chaos and more like training drums beating in rhythm. His cry was not wailing but a sharp, commanding sound, as though summoning warriors to arms. Crius saw in Pallas a reflection of the constellations' order lines and patterns that guided navigation and fate. Eurybia, however, gifted him the iron will of the sea, the relentless force of tides that advanced and retreated in perfect rhythm. Together, these gifts forged Pallas into the living embodiment of discipline in warfare. The art of war Pallas did not delight in destruction like his brother Perses, nor did he dwell in prophecy like Astraeus. Instead, he studied the philosophy of battle, He learned to wield every weapon forged by the Titans. He memorized formations of armies, how 100 could defeat 1,000 through discipline. He studied the weaknesses of both gods and mortals, learning that even the strongest could be brought low by strategy. War, to Pallas, was not chaos, but order imposed through strength. He believed that true warriors did not fight recklessly, but as extensions of their commander's will. The rise of the warrior Titan. As the Titans grew restless under the rule of Cronus, Pallas became the commander of their hosts. His very presence instilled discipline among the younger Titans and their followers. Under his guidance, armies drilled tirelessly, learning to march as one, fight as one, and obey as one. Warriors prayed to Pallas for courage, for he embodied not only brute force, but the calm precision of a general. His banner became a symbol of Titan power, and his name whispered like thunder before battle. The rivalry with Athena, but the legacy of Pallas would forever be tied to the goddess Athena. In later myths, their rivalry echoed across the ages, for Athena was also a deity of wisdom and warcraft, where Pallas represented discipline and the raw strategies of battle. Athena embodied wisdom, cunning, and justice in war. Some tales say that Athena herself defeated Pallas in combat, taking upon herself the title Pallas Athena as tribute. Others claim that Pallas fell not by her hand, but by the shifting tides of destiny, when the Olympians rose. Whatever the truth, the shadow of this rivalry would forever link the Titan and the goddess. The shadow of Titanomachy. Though the great war of gods, the Titanomachy, had not yet begun, Pallas already prepared for it. He saw the cracks in Cronus's rule, the whispers of rebellion rising from Zeus and his siblings. Unlike his father Crius, who pondered the stars, or his brother Astraeus, who foresaw destiny, Pallas acted. He began training legions of Titans and their allies, drilling them for the inevitable storm. Yet, deep within him, Pallas wondered, would discipline and strategy be enough against the rising Olympians, whose youth and cunning burned brighter than Titan power? The Titan of strategy and discipline. To mortals, Pallas became a symbol of valor and order in war. His name was invoked by generals before battle, and his presence felt in the clash of armies. For where there was structure and chaos, there was Pallas. But his destiny was not his own to decide. The constellations whispered of a coming fall, and though Pallas trained tirelessly, even he could not escape the threads of fate woven by the Moirai. For now, however, he stood unyielding, the Titan general, the strategist, the commander of Titan legions. His time would come, and with it, the greatest war the cosmos had ever seen. Chapter 8. Perses, the Titan of destruction, the unstoppable force. If Astraeus was twilight, and Pallas was order, then Perses, youngest son of Crius and Eurybia, was the storm that shattered both. His very name meant the destroyer. He was not born beneath a calm sky or gentle omens. Instead, when he entered the world, the heavens split, mountains trembled, and the sea roared as if struck by unseen hammers. Even at birth, Perses was destruction made flesh. The child who broke what he touched as an infant. Perses could not be held without breaking what surrounded him. Stones cracked beneath his small hands, and bronze weapons snapped when he grasped them. His laughter was thunder, his cries earthquakes. Crius, who loved order in the stars, watched in silence, knowing this son was unlike any other. Eurybia, fierce mistress of the sea, saw her own untamed force within him and knew Perses was destined to shake the world. But Perses himself was restless. Unlike Astraeus, who studied omens, or Pallas, who mastered discipline, Perses struggled to find purpose. His power was raw, endless, and wild, but to what end would he wield it? The nature of destruction Perses was not cruel by design. He did not seek suffering for its own sake. Rather, he embodied the truth that all creation carried within it the seed of ruin. Where walls were built, Perses was the collapse. Where armies rose, Perses was the breaking. Where empires thrived, Perses was their fall. To mortals, he became the Titan invoked during disasters, the earthquake, the eruption, the fire that consumed cities, the storm that swallowed fleets. They feared him, but in whispers, some worshipped him, too, for destruction cleared the way for renewal. Perses was both terror and necessity, chaos and transformation. The fury of battle, while Pallas taught armies discipline, Perses reveled in the heart of combat. Where his brother instructed soldiers to march in formation, Perses broke ranks, smashing through enemies with unstoppable fury. No shield could withstand him, no wall could hold him. Yet this same recklessness made him dangerous, even to allies. Though he inspired fear in his enemies, he also brought unease to his fellow Titans. For Perses did not fight for strategy or prophecy, he fought for the sheer truth of destruction. The rivalry of brothers, often, Pallas and Perses, clashed. Pallas valued control, Perses cared nothing for it. Their arguments shook the halls of the Titans. Pallas accused Perses of endangering their cause, while Perses mocked his brother's endless drills and orders. Only Astraeus, calm and watchful, kept balance between them. He reminded them that both order and chaos had their place in the universe, just as stars needed both darkness and light to shine. Still, Perses's raw power often overshadowed reason, leaving even his brothers wary of his might. The shadow of Titanomachy, when whispers of rebellion spread when Zeus and the Olympians prepared to challenge Cronus, Perses grew restless. Unlike Pallas, who drilled armies, or Astraeus, who watched the omens, Perses longed for the battle itself. He did not fear war, he craved it. For war was the stage upon which destruction reigned supreme. Perses knew his destiny was not to build, but to tear down. He would be the hammer that broke the order of the world, even if it meant his own ruin. The Titan of catastrophe to mortals, Perses became the face of inevitable endings. Temples crumbled in his name, storms raged as his breath, and every ruined city bore his unseen mark. Yet, even in this, he was honored, for only when something ends can something new begin. Thus, Perses stood as both feared and revered. To the Titans, he was a weapon, a force unleashed when restraint no longer mattered. To the Olympians to come, he was a warning that raw might without purpose would always fall to cunning. To mortals, he was the catastrophe that shaped history itself. Perses did not merely destroy, he defined destruction. Chapter 9. Crius and the Loom of Constellations. The eternal map of the heavens, the night sky, is a canvas upon which mortals and gods alike have always gazed, searching for meaning, direction, and destiny. Yet few knew that behind its patterns, its endless stars, stood the silent work of one Titan, Crius, the keeper of the constellations. It was he who wove the stars into order, stitching chaos into harmony, creating the loom of constellations that governed both heaven and earth. The Titan's silent vigil, Crius, unlike his brothers who sought dominion in clear and forceful ways, was quiet. His power was subtle, not thunder or storm. but the patient alignment of the heavens. While Hyperion blazed in the east with light and Iapetus forged the fate of mankind, Crius turned his gaze southward, charting the eternal balance of the skies. Each night, he traced invisible lines between stars, drawing shapes that became guides for mortals. The hunter who forever chased across the heavens, the lion who roared with summer's heat, the scales that brought balance to autumn's harvest. Through his constellations, the seasons unfolded. Farmers knew when to sow and when to reap. Sailors learned to follow stars to cross unknown seas. Priests read omens in their alignment, linking mortal fate to the will of the gods. The cosmic loom Crius was not merely arranging stars, he was weaving time itself. The constellations were threads, and the heavens his loom. As he guided them across the sky, night by night, they marked the turning of the year, the cycles of life and death. When Orion rose, winter's chill followed. When Virgo ascended, the fields blossomed with harvest. When Scorpio spread his claws, storms raged with fury. Thus, the loom of Crius was not just a map, but a cosmic calendar, a rhythm to which all creation danced. The gift to mortals, mortals came to revere the stars as divine, building temples aligned with constellations and offering prayers to the heavens. They did not always know Crius's name, but in their chants and rituals, they honored his work. Every time a sailor set his course by Polaris, or a shepherd counted the rising of stars to guide his flocks, they unknowingly followed the will of the Titan of Constellations. Crius gave mortals not weapons or storms, but knowledge, a gift as powerful as war or prophecy. The stars and his children, the constellations, also became a legacy for his children. Astraeus saw in them the flow of destiny, reading omens in their shifts. Pallas used their order to teach his soldiers timing and strategy. Perses, though less patient, found in their inevitable cycles the truth of destruction and renewal. Through the stars, Crius bound his bloodline to the very fabric of the cosmos, the foreshadowing of war. But even as Crius wove the stars, darker patterns emerged. He saw alignments that foretold upheaval, the rise of the Olympians, the shattering of Titan rule. The constellations whispered of war, of gods overthrowing gods. Crius understood that his work would outlast him. Even if Titans fell, the stars would endure. The constellations would remain as silent witnesses to the wars of heaven. The eternal weaver Crius did not boast of his power, nor seek thrones or crowns. Instead, he stood beneath the heavens, night after night, continuing his eternal vigil. To weave the stars was his destiny, his burden, and his gift. And so, even when his kindred would march into war, Crius remained the weaver of the heavens, shaping the constellations that mortals still look upon to this day. In every star, his hand is seen. In every season, his rhythm is felt. The loom of Crius was eternal. Chapter 10. The Titanomachy begins the clash of ages, the gathering storm for countless eons. The Titans had ruled, their thrones seated deep within Mount Othries. They were the first children of Uranus and Gaia, embodiments of primordial power. Yet in the shadow of their reign grew a new force, the Olympians, children of Cronus, born of rebellion, vengeance, and destiny. Whispers spread through the cosmos, whispers of Zeus, the thunder-wielding son who had escaped his father's hunger and now rallied his siblings. The fates themselves had woven prophecy. A new order would rise, and the age of the Titans would end. The call of war, it began with defiance. Zeus, having freed his siblings from the belly of Cronus, declared open war. From Olympus he thundered, "No longer shall we bow to the old order. The age of Titans is at an end. We claim the sky, the earth, and the sea, for a new pantheon shall rule." The words echoed across heaven and earth, stirring the rage of the Titans. Cronus, though heavy with time and fear, called upon his brethren. One by one they gathered, Hyperion blazing with celestial fire, Iapetus with his cold cunning, Crius, cloaked in constellations, and Oceanus, whose seas trembled at the call. But not all Titans answered. Some wavered, some foresaw the doom. Still, the war drums of Uthres sounded, and the cosmos trembled. The armies assemble the Titans of Uthres, Cronus at their head, flanked by Hyperion, Crius, Cus, and Iapetus. Giants, monsters, and ancient forces marched at their side. The Olympians of Olympus, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, Hera, and Demeter, stood united, wielding weapons forged by the Cyclopes and wisdom guided by the 100-handed Hecatonchires. The air thickened with power. Earthquakes split mountains, oceans churned. The very constellations that Crius wove seemed to shiver, sensing their master's doom. The first clash the war did not begin with subtlety. Hyperion answered with fire that scorched the clouds, while Poseidon split the seas and sent waves crashing against Titan strongholds. Crius raised his hands, pulling at the constellations, bending starlight into weapons of piercing flame. His stars fell like meteors upon the armies of Olympus, searing the earth and leaving craters as deep as valleys. Yet Zeus stood unshaken. His lightning met the falling stars, their clash lighting the heavens brighter than the sun. The weaving of destiny. In the chaos, Crius sought patterns, trying to bend the war to his will. He saw the constellations shift, forming signs of betrayal, sacrifice, and change. The stars whispered of Olympian victory, though the Titans roared with confidence. Crius fought not with brute force like Atlas, or with savage cunning like Iapetus, but with precision, every strike aligned with cosmic order. Every move echoing a celestial pattern. Still, even as he fought, he knew, the stars do not lie. The Olympians were destined to rise. The endless battle, the Titanomachy, raged for years, 10 long years of thunder and fire, of seas rising and mountains falling. Mortals, still young and fragile, cowered as their world was torn asunder. Rivers changed course, forests burned, and the very sky shook as gods clashed. Yet neither side yielded. The Titans drew on ancient might, unbroken and immense. And so the war stretched on, each battle more terrible than the last. The shadow of what was to come. As the 10th year approached, Crius saw it in the heavens, a final alignment, a constellation forming a sword, piercing a crown. It was the sign the war would end, and with it, the age of Titans. Still, he fought, for though the stars foretold defeat, Crius was a Titan bound by loyalty, by pride, and by the eternal threads he had woven into the night. The Titanomachy had begun, and there was no turning back. Chapter 11. Atlas, the bearer of the skies, the weight of the cosmos. Atlas, son of Iapetus. Among all the Titans who followed Cronus into war, none was as mighty as Atlas, son of Iapetus and Clymene. Towering above gods and mortals alike, his shoulders were said to be broader than mountains, and his strength rivaled the very pillars of the earth. Unlike Crius, who wielded the stars, or Hyperion, who shone like the sun, Atlas was raw power incarnate. He was the bulwark of the Titans, the unshakable wall against which Olympian hopes would be dashed. Cronus himself declared, "Atlas shall be my shield, the pillar of our defiance. Let him stand, and Olympus shall fall." The wrath of war, the Titanomachy, raged into its 10th year, and Atlas fought at the front lines of every great battle. He hurled mountains as weapons, splitting valleys with his strikes. When Zeus unleashed storms, Atlas charged through the thunder, his laughter echoing louder than the storm itself. Poseidon, lord of the seas, sent tsunamis crashing against him. But Atlas waded through the waters as though they were no more than a stream. Even Hades, with his armies of shadow, could not break the Titan's resolve. Atlas became a living legend in the war of force that even Olympians whispered of in fear. The duel of Zeus and Atlas, inevitably, Zeus himself came to face Atlas. Upon the battlefield, thunder met earth-shaking might. Zeus raised his thunderbolt, its light brighter than the dawn. Atlas answered by tearing a mountain from its roots and hurling it skyward. The clash shook the world, mountains crumbling, seas boiling, and the heavens ablaze with storms. For days their battle raged. Atlas's fists broke through walls of lightning, while Zeus's bolts seared his flesh, but could not bring him down. Titans and Olympians alike paused to watch. For this was no mere skirmish, it was the contest of supremacy between raw might and divine kingship. The turning tide, yet Zeus was not alone. While Atlas grappled with the storm god, the Hecatonchires, the 100-handed giants, freed by Zeus, entered the fray. Each hurled boulders larger than mountains, striking the Titans with relentless fury. Atlas fought them too, his strength unmatched. But even his colossal power began to waver. The prophecy that Crius had seen in the stars unfolded. The Titans, though mighty, could not withstand the combined might of Olympus and their allies. The last stand of Atlas, when the final clash came, Atlas stood at the forefront, unyielding. With his roar, he rallied the Titans one last time. His strikes split the battlefield, and his defiance inspired those around him. But Zeus, summoning the full force of his thunder, struck Atlas down. The skies themselves seemed to cry as lightning bound the Titan's arms, and chains forged of celestial fire wrapped around his frame. Atlas fell to his knees, the ground trembling beneath him. Yet he did not plead, did not surrender. With defiant eyes, he met Zeus's gaze and declared, "You may bind me, Thunderer, but I shall never bow. My strength will endure long after thrones turn to dust." The eternal punishment for his unmatched defiance. Zeus decreed a punishment unlike any other. Atlas would not be cast into Tartarus with his brethren. Instead, he would bear a burden greater than chains or prison. He was condemned to hold the sky itself upon his shoulders, forever separating heaven from earth. And so Atlas stood, his body bowed beneath the vault of the heavens, his muscles straining against infinity. The constellations burned above him, the winds howled around him, and the weight of the cosmos pressed eternally upon his back. Legacy of the Titan. Though defeated, Atlas became immortalized, not for victory, but for endurance. Mortals would one day carve maps of the earth and name them after him, remembering the Titan who held up the world. And in whispers across the ages, storytellers would remind their listeners, strength is not merely in triumph, but in the burden one endures. The Titanomachy was nearing its end. But Atlas's punishment marked the turning point. The age of Titans was falling, and the dawn of Olympians drew near. Chapter 12. The Fall of the Titans, the twilight of an age, the final year of war for 10 long years. The Titanomachy had raged. Earthquakes split the land, seas overflowed, mountains burned, and the very stars shook as gods and titans clashed. Yet at last, the tides of fate began to lean toward Olympus. Atlas, the strongest shield of the Titans, had fallen beneath Zeus's decree, condemned to hold the sky for eternity. Crius had seen in the constellations their inevitable doom. Hyperion's blazing light had dimmed under the relentless storms. And though Cronus still stood, his power waned with each passing battle. The Titans were weary. The Olympians, fueled by destiny and youth, only grew stronger. The last stand at Mount Othrys, Cronus summoned his remaining brothers and children to Mount Othrys, the seat of Titan rule. From its iron thrones, he rallied his warriors for one final stand. Titans, do not falter. The heavens are ours by birth, and no usurper shall claim them. Better to fall in fire than bow to the will of suns. The Titans roared their defiance. Hyperion burned like a dying sun. Iapetus sharpened his spear with vengeance, and Cus wove intellect into strategy. The last army of the old order gathered, their shadows stretching across the earth. But from Olympus descended the new gods, Zeus with his thunder, Poseidon with his trident, Hades cloaked in shadows, and their sisters at their side. With them marched the Hecatoncheires and the Cyclopes, their might shaking the very core of the world. The battlefield was set, the clash of eternity. The battle began with fury unlike any before. Zeus unleashed a storm so great that day turned to night, lightning ripping the heavens apart. Hyperion answered with fire that engulfed the battlefield, a blaze so fierce it turned rivers into steam. Poseidon summoned earthquakes and towering waves that crushed Titan ranks. Iapetus, swift and merciless, struck down gods and giants alike, his spear gleaming with hatred. Mountains shattered, oceans boiled. The cries of gods and titans filled the cosmos. The war had reached its crescendo. Cronus versus Zeus at the heart of battle. Father and son faced one another. Cronus, wielder of the sickle that had once overthrown Uranus, struck with the fury of an ancient king. Each blow split the air, each swing carved craters into the ground. But Zeus, with the thunder of heaven in his grasp, met him with storms that shook the world. Lightning clashed against iron, fire against storm, old against new. For hours they fought, neither yielding. But as the stars aligned, the prophecy unfolded. Zeus raised a thunderbolt, forged by the Cyclopes, greater than any before. With a cry that split the sky, he cast it upon Cronus. The sickle shattered. The king of Titans fell. The fall into Tartarus with their leader broken, the Titans faltered. Zeus unleashed the Hecate, whose 100 arms hurled mountains upon mountains, burying the Titan legions. The Olympians pressed forward, their power unstoppable. One by one, the Titans fell. Hyperion's flames were drowned, Crios's constellations torn from the sky, Iapetus bound in unbreakable chains. And so Zeus decreed, let the Titans be cast into Tartarus, the pit without light, the prison without end. There shall they dwell, bound by chains of fire, guarded by the Hecatoncheires, until the end of time. The gates of Tartarus opened blacker than night. The defeated Titans were hurled within, their cries echoing through eternity, as the abyss swallowed them whole. All save Atlas, whose punishment was different. He remained upon the earth, forever bearing the heavens. The dawn of Olympus. Silence fell across the world. The war was ended. The earth trembled, but now in peace. The seas calmed, the skies cleared, and the stars once more shone in order. From the ashes of Titan rule, a new age was born. Zeus stood upon Olympus, crowned in thunder. Beside him were his brothers and sisters, their thrones rising high above the world. The fates smiled, for destiny had been fulfilled. The age of Titans was over. The reign of Olympians had begun. Legacy of the Titans, though defeated, the Titans were never forgotten. Their strength lingered in the earth, their fire in the sun, their wisdom in the stars, and their defiance in the hearts of mortals. And so the story was told. The Titans had fallen, but their echo endured, a reminder that even gods must bow to fate.